Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mei Lee Show. Glad you could join me. This show is going to be a little bit different. I decided to do this episode in this way because today we are exactly 3 weeks away from Election Day, November 3rd. And this is really, truly one of the most important elections that we will perhaps ever go through in our lifetimes. I certainly can speak for myself. I have been voting ever since I could, and this is really, to me, feels like it's make or break for this country. We have gone through so much in just this past year, but really, truly, in the last few years. And again, I'm going to preface this by saying, most of you know, if you've been listening or watching the show, you know that I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I think he's been very destructive to this country in so many ways. And so, yes, almost 4 years ago, I was not happy when he was elected. But I figured, like a lot of us, that, okay, well, maybe he'll become a different person. Maybe all the stuff that we knew about him, including the comment about grabbing a woman's pussy, was just something that would... he would be remorseful about, and that he would change once he felt the weight of really the world on his shoulders, being the president of the United States. And this is a role that is truly the most powerful position on earth. And so I really thought that maybe he would turn around and come around. But that clearly hasn't happened, at least in my eyes. I know some of you out there may have a very different opinion, and that's fine. That's okay. That's what a free society allows for, this kind of debate and discourse. But what it's turned into now, no thanks to Donald Trump, is that the discourse has turned into hatred and violence and division by all of the things that he has promoted and said, everything from the horrible things he has said about immigrants to the things he's obviously said about COVID and Asians, and calling it Kung Flu and not retracting that, calling white supremacists good people. Even in the last presidential debate, he refused to denounce white supremacy. So he has shown us who he really is many times. Many times, not just once, not just twice, many times. I don't know how much proof people need to realize that this is not a man of character, and this is not a man who can lead in a proper, unified way as president. So I wanted to take this time not to just bash Trump. Listen, I as much as I would love to, I wanted to take this time during the show to just talk about the importance of voting, and also some of the surveys that have been coming out about Asian Americans, the demographics of voters, and also other new surveys that have come out that really maybe present a stronger case of what I'm saying about the need for change in this country. And I'm going to start with this survey that the Anti-Defamation League put out just recently. And they're trying to put out these articles leading up to the election, and they're calling it At the Extremes, the 2020 Election and American Extremism. Well, just recently, just this week, they put out this article where they did research on the after effects of when Donald Trump said that he had COVID, that he had contracted COVID. And so on October 2nd, President Trump tweeted shortly before 1 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time that both he and First Lady Melania Trump tested positive for COVID-19. Well, I guess the Center for Technology and Society at the ADL, they analyzed a subset of conversations on Twitter. This is how they found this data. It was centered on the president's announcement about him contracting the virus. So the CTS found that in the 12 hours following the tweet, the rate of language linked to anti-Asian hostility in the subset of conversations on Twitter rose by approximately 85% in just those 12 hours. 85% of anti-Asian hostility, okay? So the hostility, they really broke it down, increased from an average of roughly 0.33% of tweets in the conversation about his sickness because of his tweet to an average of roughly 0.61% in the period after. So it doubled, okay? And then from October 2nd, when he made this announcement, to October 5th, the percentage of anti-Asian sentiment on Twitter in this subset of conversations remained elevated. So for those couple of days, it remained really high, and people were just continuously tweeting out this anti-Asian sentiment and hostility. I certainly got it on Twitter, and I think I asked my warriors to do what they do best and go after the racists who were coming after me, and it worked. Thanks, guys. But I got it personally as well, so I saw it, I witnessed it. So here we are. This is where we're at. I mean, I'm just using this as an example, just the most recent example of what kind of support Donald Trump receives. And unfortunately, racists and those who think that lashing out at Asians for COVID and other reasons is okay. And they're doing it more and more. And they're doing it, and it's incited by all of Donald Trump's rhetoric since COVID began back in February. But again, this is this has been years of him being in this position of power and using it as a bully pulpit. We know that he's a bully. We know he's made fun of everyone from the disabled to Muslims to Gold Star families to journalists to, everyone. So this is no surprise, of course, but I'm speaking to the Asian community here, right? That's mainly the reason for my show. I want you guys to understand what is at stake. That if you are sitting there complaining about racism and complaining about, people not treating you well and making fun of you and saying all these horrific comments in public and attacking Asians on the street, you better know where it's coming from and how it's being fueled. Okay, I'm not putting 100% blame on Donald Trump and his supporters, but it ain't helping. Okay, it ain't helping. So you can't ignore this as some other problem that's being caused by some other source. This is a pervasive problem. Racism has existed in this country, of course, forever. Ask African Americans. But because of leadership and because of the lack of integrity, this has become acceptable behavior. Acceptable behavior to target these groups, including Asians, and treating us like the other, treating us as subhuman, and treating us as people who can be made fun of, can be bullied, can be beaten up, can be attacked. And there will be no repercussions. All right, so that's that study. It's the Anti-Defamation League's latest study on what happened after Donald Trump announced on Twitter that he had COVID. So now we go to the whole idea of the Asian vote. Now, historically, Asians have the lowest voter turnout. That's an embarrassing thing to admit, but unfortunately, that has been the case in the past. 2016, it was a little bit of a different story. It started increasing. And then 2018, the midterm elections, it completely exploded. And so Asian Americans came out in droves. So that was a very good sign that Asians were becoming more engaged politically and, wanting to exercise their right to vote, which is exactly why I'm wanting to do this show. So here's the thing. The Asian American electorate is made up of more than 11 million people in the country. Okay, 11 million eligible voters, I should say. And it really has grown in recent years. It's ballooned by 130% in the past 2 decades. Okay, that's why we're the fastest growing voting bloc in the country of anyone, which is incredible. Most people don't know that we're the fastest growing voting bloc in the country, as well as obviously we are the fastest growing ethnic group in the country. Okay, so we have growing influence in many ways, including politically. Now, that figure of ballooning 130% in the past 2 decades, compare that, according to Pew Research. The white electorate grew by 7% in the same period of time. 7% versus 130%. That's a huge difference. And that goes to show that even though we're smaller in numbers, we have about a little under 5 million. We're made up of 11 million eligible voters. We make up less than 5% of the population here. It still goes to show that our growing numbers in terms of eligible voters and population, as it continues to expand, our influence is becoming more and more powerful. Okay, so when I hear people say, oh, they don't care or my vote doesn't count, no. That really bugs the shit out of me when I hear that. Okay, so another survey that came out recently, and actually I am hoping to interview the folks from AAPI Data who conduct a lot of different surveys. They're always collecting data on the Asian American Pacific Islander population. I'm hoping to get one of them on the show to do another extensive show on all the data they've collected leading up to the election. So we'll see if they come on the show. But for now, I'm just going to give you just some brief statistics and data that they found. So it says that according to the latest survey that they did, 54% of Asian Americans would vote for Biden if they were to choose today, while about 30% would pick President Donald Trump. Okay, so, most Asian Americans would favor Biden over Trump. It's interesting because in past elections, Asian Americans have moved slightly towards the Democratic Party. In the past, historically, Asians have been more conservative and Republican. But some groups are starting to move to the right, according to this survey, which is very interesting. Vietnamese Americans actually are the least supportive. They're actually much more conservative, and they are leaning towards Trump more than Biden. One of the surveyors was saying, well, there's maybe a reasoning for this, even though the Vietnamese population is heavily made up of a refugee community. There's an idea that Trump has created a kind of us versus them, meaning good immigrant versus bad immigrant. And he's convinced perhaps the Vietnamese community that he looks upon them as the good immigrant and maybe Mexicans as bad immigrants. As we know, he has called Mexican rapists. There might be something to be said for that, but that's an interesting breakdown. Another survey, you know what? I should stick with this AAPI data survey. They're saying that there's growing importance in some really competitive states when it comes to the Asian American vote, because some of these competitive states, the gap is so slim in the political races that, those razor thin margins, the difference could be the Asian vote, right? So places like Nevada, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania. I mean, these are all crucial states in both the presidential election and, of course, congressional elections. So that's something really to think about, that when you say my vote doesn't count, it really may in these tight races. All right? Okay, so let's go back to what I was going to say about another survey. This other survey says 73% of young Asian Americans, 18 to 34, support Biden. 73%. and 17% support Trump. So that's a huge difference when it comes to young Asian Americans. But the downside is only 1 in 3 young AAPI unregistered voters, okay, 1 in 3 unregistered young AAPI voters do not plan to register to vote. The largest barriers were categorized as motivational, meaning they don't see any candidates to vote for because they don't think their votes will make a difference or because they don't care enough about politics. Okay, if you are one of these people in this category right now, what the fuck is your problem? Seriously, that is unacceptable. Saying that you're not motivated because you don't care about the candidates or you think your vote's not going to count is not an excuse to not exercise your right to vote. We live in a democracy. There are countries around the world where you cannot vote, and people would literally die to be able to vote for a leader, who might lead their country in the right direction. Well, here we are in the largest democracy in the world, and you're saying that you don't care enough to vote, so you're not going to bother to register. You don't want to cast your ballot because it's too cumbersome, too hard, can't be bothered. Look around you. Look around you right now. And you know what? Honestly, if you guys are the young ones, listen, my life is way more than half over. So, I can certainly worry about the future, of course, and I do. But you guys have a lot more to worry about at this rate. You have a lot more to worry about. You have the political climate to worry about. You have racism to worry about. You have the economy to worry about. You have jobs to worry about. You have the climate to worry about. I mean, you name education. The list can go on and on. So if you're saying that you don't care enough to vote, you're basically saying you don't give a shit about your life. You don't care about your future. You don't even care about now, because right now is where we need to be and thinking about what we have to do now to change the course of this insanity roller coaster that we're on. So that is a disappointing statistic, and I really hope that does not play out in terms of this election. I really hope in these final weeks that these 1 in 3 young AAPI unregistered voters realizes that actually they need to do their civic duty and cast a vote. Okay. The other thing that I need to talk about, and this actually has to do with conversations I've had with my 83-year-old Korean mother. And my mom is your typical traditional Korean woman, right? She has some conservative values, and she is Christian, attends church and Bible study and all of that. And so she has some conservative values. However, she certainly does not believe in what's happening in this country. She doesn't support it, and she also sees Donald Trump as a man who is not somebody she can respect, because she believes in real values, in true values, in not lying, in respecting other people. Obviously, she as a Christian believes in treating, your neighbor as yourself, right, and doing good in the world. So, Donald Trump conflicts with a lot of what she believes in, as he does with me and a lot of other people. So she was telling me, though, that she's been having conversations with some of her other senior citizen friends who are Korean, and many of them are well off, right? They're doctors and wives of doctors, and, they've done well for themselves. And they say that they're going to vote for Trump, that they believe in him because he is, he's helped the stock market, and he is a successful businessman. He's cut taxes, and he's Christian, but Mike Pence is even a stronger Christian. I mean, the stuff she was I think the first time she told me this, I was driving and I nearly like drove off the road because I was so angry. But, I calmly spoke to her and said, you need to speak to your friends and tell them the truth and lay out the facts. Things like, the truth is Trump only cares about the stock market because he wants to help the super wealthy, the top 1%, because those are the people who are heavily invested in the stock market. They play the market, they know how to work it, and so they are helped by a good stock market in a much bigger way than the average person. Because, the argument from the Republicans and others, they'll say, well, everybody has a pension or everybody has a 401k that's invested in the stock market. That is true to a certain extent, but they sure as hell don't have as much money in the stock market compared to the super rich. Okay, so the average person is not going to benefit from skyrocketing stock market as much as the super rich. Okay, it's just very common sense, very basic. Okay, 2, they say he's a successful businessman, so he knows how to run the economy. Well, he's run the economy to the ground, right, at this point. He is not a successful businessman. Look at what's happening to our economy right now. There's still 10 million people unemployed. Businesses are shutting down. Now, granted, it's a lot to do with COVID, but he is not looking after the average person. He's not looking after Main Street. He only cares about corporate America and its wealthy friends. He has, Trump businesses have declared bankruptcy 6 times from 1991 to 2009. 6 times bankruptcy. He owes $500 million at least in loans. Right? We learned that from the New York Times article that recently came out about his financial situation and some of his tax records. So he owes at least $500 million, and those loans are going to come around soon, and people will be wanting to collect. Where the hell is he going to get the money to repay those loans? And some of those loans have come from India and Turkey and the Philippines. What do you think those countries are going to do or ask for if he can't repay those loans? Yeah, it puts us in a precarious situation in terms of national security, that's for sure. And of course, we know he's a tax evader. Doesn't pay taxes, hasn't paid taxes for years. In 2 years, he paid $750 in federal taxes. So this guy is, has no integrity, has no problem lying and cheating his way through life. The tax cuts that people talk about, like my mother's friends, they're only for the super wealthy, the top 1%. They're the only ones who benefited from the tax cuts he just constantly raves about. And then the Christianity part. Let's talk about that for a second. The Christianity part really bugs the shit out of me. Sorry for swearing when I'm talking about Christianity. Sorry about that. But yeah, it really bothers me because as a Christian, and I consider myself a progressive Christian, but as a Christian who knows the teachings of the Bible and who knows the teachings of Jesus Christ and what the authenticity is when it comes to Christ's teachings, there's nothing Christian about Donald Trump. And for that matter, Mike Pence. Mike Pence claims to be such a devout Christian and, just so pious. But a man who can stand side by side with a man like Donald Trump with zero values and ethics and just grotesque behavior, throughout his entire life, I don't know how Mike Pence can actually convince himself and justify the fact that he can support someone like that and be, the guy's vice president. I don't know how you reconcile that at all. Donald Trump is a man who said in an interview that he has nothing to ask God for forgiveness. Point blank, he said that on in a television interview. Said, no, I have nothing. He referred to Second Corinthians, the book in the Bible, Second Corinthians says 2 Corinthians. Imbecile. And then according to former staff members, and that includes Michael Cohen, who of course came out with a recent book called Disloyal, Trump has made fun of Christians left and right, calling them suckers, just wanting their endorsement by, quote, playing their game. He has said, he has commented on pastors who prayed for him in the Oval Office. And he is saying, can you believe this bullshit? Right-wing Christian leaders who have shown their support for Donald Trump all along, they have tried to justify Trump's atrocious behavior, saying that, oh, well, we're not voting for him to teach third grade Sunday school, or he's a baby Christian, but, he has accepted Jesus Christ into his heart. Greg Thornberry, I'm going to read this, a former president of the Evangelical King's College, said that even those who acknowledge Trump's lack of personal piety are convinced that he holds their faith in high esteem. Quote, I don't think for a moment that he would believe he's cynical about them, he said. Well, I guess they have now seen that he is indeed cynical about them, and he doesn't give a rat's ass about you guys. He doesn't give a rat's ass about faith and values, especially Christian values or any kind of spiritual values. Guess what he believes in? He believes in the Church of Donald Trump. That's what he believes in. That's all he believes in. And if you guys have not read Mary Trump's book, who is Donald Trump's niece, who wrote that scathing book about the Trump family, she said the currency that the Trump family goes on is money. That's all that they go on. That's their only value system. It's money. They will do whatever it takes for more money, and they worship money, and that's how they value everything. Nothing else matters except for money. So, you have a family like that, and you have a man like Donald Trump, combine that with his sociopathic personality and his narcissism. Yeah, that's what you get. So these are all the things that I want to be able to say to people who, I don't know. I just wonder, like, why are you burying your head in the sand? Why are you cherry picking? Right? And I know that, you'll turn around and say, well, you're cherry picking too. And, Biden has his flaws and this and that. Yeah, actually, I admit that. No man, no woman is perfect. We live in a broken world, right? And we're talking about humans who are so imperfect. And, I always say dogs, animals are so much better than humans. So, long after we're gone, animals, nature, they're all going to be like, hooray, we have the planet back. But until that happens, humans, unfortunately, are the cancer of this planet. But at least we can try to be a little bit more aware of what's truly at stake and really get back to a place where we know the difference between truth and lies. We know the difference between right and wrong. We know the difference between good and bad. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to like kindergartners right now when I say stuff like that. But that's how far we've gone away from the basics of humanity and civility. The basics of decency don't exist, or they hardly exist, I should say. So this election, I feel like it's just trying to get us back to a place of some normalcy. Not this dystopian, insane, crazy, otherworld, like stranger than fiction, Stranger Things, upside down world that we're living in. That's why 3 weeks away now from this election, we need to change the course of this country and society and behavior. It has gone too far. We have become too divided. people have become too crazy. And we are all so blinded now with such rage and hatred and frustration and hopelessness. It's, yeah. I mean, we're all suffering from this kind of anxiety that we need to do something about it. And I'm not saying the election is going to solve everything. That's not going to happen. But at least we need to try and shift. I really hope that you will take this seriously and we can course correct and we can all come together and work together. Because deep down inside, most of us want the same thing. We all want this country to thrive. We all want each other to thrive. We all want to, see each other as equals and move forward. Okay, so let's make this happen. Please, because I cannot take any more of this shit. I cannot take any more of the racism, the division, the hatred, and all of this anger that everyone is feeling, including me. All right, so let's just make a difference here and cast your ballot. Do it as soon as you can. We're seeing people going out for early voting, some waiting in line for 11 hours, which is so fucked up. But you know what? We got to do what we got to do. And if that means standing in line for hours on end to vote, we got to do it. Just do whatever you can. Mail in your vote. Use those official ballots. Don't fall for the fake ballot boxes that we're seeing in California. What the hell with that problem? Anyway, I know I'm rambling now, but just do it. Please do it and let's make a difference. Okay? All right. Everyone take care and I'll see you soon.